Appreciate that. I think that for me, I'm a pretty simple guy, and lean is simple. And the unfortunate thing is, there's a lot of consultants, there's a lot of leaders out there that unfortunately have felt like they need to add all of this complexity to something that maybe doesn't need it, and I think that one of the things that I appreciate about what Toyota did is that it is a simple concept. And if you understand the concepts around continuous improvement and becoming a learning organization, then anyone can do it in any industry, at any level of an organization. And, that's really what I just love, when people get it and they understand that it's not about the tools. It's not about, this tool worked for this organization, so I need to apply it here. No. You need to learn what works for you. And I think that that's been the game changer, for a lot of organizations, is really truly understanding what it means to be a learning organization.
Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. My name is Paul Critchley. I'm the president of New England Lean Consulting and the host of the New England Lean podcast, which you know because you're listening to this right now. So welcome back, everybody, to season 2. I am psyched to be back. We had a great break. Took a few weeks off, finished up some projects with clients, and then kind of unplugged for a week and a half or so. To get the batteries recharged, just, hang out with the family and reflect and do some planning for this year. And I'm ready to rock and roll. We're kicking off season 2 with a blast. We're welcoming Patrick Adams to the show. Patrick is an internationally recognized leadership coach, consultant, professional speaker. He's best known for his unique human approach to sound team building practices, creating consensus, enabling empowerment. Patrick has been delivering bottom line results through specialized process improvement solutions for over 20 years. He's worked with all kinds of businesses, from private to nonprofit to government and manufacturing, ranging from small businesses to billion-dollar corporations. And last and certainly not least, he has a new book coming out entitled Avoiding the Continuous Appearance Trap. It is available for pre-sale right now. It is coming out in print on January 13th, so literally next week. And then the ebook is going to be coming out in February 10th. And in this book, he compares and contrasts two companies. One is actually doing continuous improvement. Another one just kind of looks like it. And I don't want to spoil anything. I've had the privilege and the honor to be on his launch team, so I've gotten to read a lot of this book already. It's fantastic. So I'll link to it in the show notes, but absolutely, guys, as we kick 2020 to the curb with no looking back, because I'm certainly not going to miss it at all. I think this is a great way to start 2021 with a refreshing new outlook of more and better things to come. So I can't say enough. I consider Patrick a friend. We talked a little bit about it in the podcast. He and I met at the University of New Hampshire a couple of years ago. We were both speaking there. Had a great chat with him. He's a solid dude. He knows what he's talking about. I'm a big believer in his messaging, and we talk a lot about that in the podcast. He hits on a couple of highlights from the book, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but we really talk about the culture piece and what that means, and kind of how that's the nucleus to this whole thing, right? To lean, because there's tools we have lots of them. There's value stream mapping and Kaizen and 5S and right, all this fun stuff, Kanban, but the culture is the core, and that's really what we talk about. And Patrick is a big believer in this, and that's why I have the utmost respect for him. So I was so happy when I reached out to him, and he said yes. And I do want to shout out a listener. I won't use his last name because he didn't give me permission to, and I didn't ask because I forgot. But Brett, I know you're a listener, so thank you. Brett had I put the shout out, I think on Twitter. If anybody knows anybody that would be a good guest, hit me up. And Brett had emailed me. He said, there's this guy, Patrick Adams. I follow him on LinkedIn and I like what he says. So, maybe have him on, and we can get to know him a little bit better. And I had one of those V8 moments. I'm like, of course, it's like, here's a guy, I know this guy. So I should have thought of that. So yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm so excited to be kicking off season 2 with everybody. Thank you for making season 1 a success. I had a blast doing it. And like I said, you can hear it in my voice. I'm excited to be back. I'm ready to go. And I'm elated to be kicking it off with Patrick Adams. So I'll zip it, give this a listen, and I hope you'll like it. And again, welcome back. Welcome to 2021. I hope this year brings prosperity for everybody. It's got to be better than last year, because that kind of was not the funnest of times. But anyways, looking forward, new and better things to come. Thanks again, everybody. I appreciate you, and we'll see you real soon. All right, everybody, welcome to season 2, episode 1 of the New England Lean podcast. We made it. So
Yes.
I hope everybody had a great holiday. As I mentioned in the intro, I am honored to have Patrick Adams as our guest today. Patrick, hello, sir.
Hey, how you doing, Paul?
I'm
Glad to
doing
be
all
here.
right. Yeah. And I forgot to mention, you are well, I didn't say, I forgot. I'm sorry I mentioned it, but former Marine. So thank you very much for your service.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate
Lean
that very
thinker.
much. Yes.
Absolutely. Like, I see you. I mean, we actually get to meet at UNH.
We did
Last year before?
A couple years ago, I think. Now
God,
we're 2 years now. This last year, you got to take that off that's got to be taken away here. But no, it's been a couple years now. We were at University of New Hampshire there, and I think my favorite part of that conference was the balloon tower activity. Do you remember that?
I do. I stole it, and I use that now.
Yeah. It's very similar to the Marshmallow Challenge, but I really enjoyed that. It was a good activity, good takeaway from there.
Yeah, definitely. And that was the first time I'd gotten to see Travis Mills speak live.
Oh,
I don't
powerful.
know if you had known who he was.
I did not. But I bought his book for my son, and I've listened to some of his videos since then too. I mean, obviously, powerful speaker, powerful story. Definitely was very impactful for me.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm a Mainer, and he lives in Maine now. So I kind of knew a little bit, but I'd never seen him in person. I'd seen him, obviously in the news and stuff. So like you mentioned, seeing him speak live, and the funny thing is, and I've been working on trying to get him on the podcast. So if anybody from the Travis Mills Foundation is listening, you got to help me out, because you got to help me get him on here. But yeah, just to hear him speak, it's like, and the funny thing was, I teased him after, because we were chit-chatting, and I'm like, dude, like, you walked up to the stage and you get a standing ovation. Right. I was teaching a workshop in that same room on that same stage directly after him. And I'm like,
oh, geez,
how am I supposed to follow this?
Yeah, you can't. There's no way.
I was like, great. So
yeah, I don't know how that worked out for them to get him as a speaker, but they did a great job with that. I loved listening to him and just making the connections to continuous improvement in the work that we do. So it was very good.
It was awesome. So anyways, again, Patrick, thank you so much for agreeing to be on, and I'm so excited that I get to kick this off with you, right? Because let's face facts. We could be brothers. I mean, anybody listening is like, what the hell is this guy talking about? But anybody watching's like,
anyone without hair and glasses pretty much looks the same. I get it all the time.
Yeah, it happens to me too. I used to get Anthony Edwards a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
In any event, so. You, sir, have been up to an awful lot of stuff. I see you online. Love the content that you post.
Appreciate that.
Sure. No, I do too. And I try to share it. I mean, because it's all good stuff. And I think I mentioned to you before we jumped on, on social media, I will put out like, hey, if you want to be on the podcast, or you know of anybody that you think would be a good guest, let me know. And I had somebody reach out and say, you got to have Patrick Adams on. You got to check his content out. And I'm like, that's a great idea. I should have thought of that myself, especially considering, we got to hang out a little bit in New Hampshire. So I wanted to kind of start with, as I mentioned, you are a retired Marine, yes?
Yes. I was medically retired in 2005.
Okay. And how long were you in for?
8 years,
Wow.
just about 8 years. Yeah.
All right. So,
Yeah. My
sir,
wife, actually, see here, this is my wife. She was in the Army. This is her shadow box. Normally in the military, when you get out, they give you a shadow box, or there's different things that you get. But then this one up here is mine. I was joking before we pushed record here today. My wife said, well, "Why do you have your shadow box in the office, but not mine?" She felt a little like, I'd love to have your shadow box in there. So because people always ask me, "Were you in the Army?" No, that was my wife. So
gotcha.
yeah.
Nice. So talk to me a little bit. So part of this podcast is I like people to get to know, right, the real person, right, the real guest. So what brought you through the Marines, and how did you go from being a Marine to being a lean consultant?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I enlisted in the Marine Corps. I did about maybe half a year in college, right after high school. And I actually I had a little bit of a troubled childhood, and was struggling to figure out what I was going to do in life. And I ended up in college for a short time, and then I'm like, I gotta do something, different with my life. And I needed something different at that time. And so I enlisted in the Marine Corps, and it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Like I said, I spent just about 8 years in the Marine Corps, and enlisted as a military police officer, and then in-docked. Once I got to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, I in-docked for what's called the Special Reaction Team, which is very similar to a civilian SWAT team. And shortly after that, Columbine happened. And unfortunately, there were not very many police departments or SWAT teams had been trained in how to respond to active shooters in schools at that time. And so our team was given the mission to train civilian SWAT teams on the East Coast and how to respond to an active shooter in a school, or whatever type of situation. And so that's what I spent 3 years, 4 just about 4 years at Camp Lejeune doing, and then was accepted into an officer program to finish up my college, and went up to Rhode Island for a short period.
Nice, our neck of the woods. Woo.
Yeah,
Little
yeah.
roadie.
Beautiful area. I was in Newport, so that's like what everything's like up there, right? Like Newport.
We'll go with that.
But no, so really nice area. I was actually there during 9/11, so that was an interesting time. And then went over to the University of Michigan, where I trained ROTC students and finished up my college, and then back out to the fleet. But then while I was there, I actually was going through training, and was injured, and to the point where I could not rehabilitate, and ended up being medically retired. So
okay, wow,
yeah,
that's quite a arc story.
Yes.
So all right, so you get medically retired. How did you wind up as a lean consultant? I mean, that's like
that's right. That was part of the question too.
It's that's diametrically. I'm a mechanical engineer, so people are like, "Stop! I got it. Thank you. Next question." It's like.
So good question. I actually, so when I got out of the Marine Corps, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. My training was in law enforcement, but the injury that I had did not allow me to get certified in Michigan. Law enforcement, you have to go through certain certifications and things. And so I wasn't able to do that. And so I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. And I had a friend that landed me a job at a plastics plant in West Michigan here, working as a production supervisor. And that was my first taste of manufacturing. And I just fell in love with that. The idea of, I know this sounds weird, but maybe not to the engineers out there, but just the idea of taking, raw materials and all of these process steps, to the point where you have this finished product that you can then deliver to your customer, just was something that just really made sense to me, right? And I'm a process thinker, and so just being able to look at that and determine how do we make this process better, and how do we get better at that, and then obviously being a leader, I had worked under and had worked with many different leaders in the military, and so being able to take a lot of the learnings from the leadership that I learned and worked under in the military, and being able to apply that in the manufacturing world was pretty powerful. And so that was my first taste. And I started to learn a little bit about continuous improvement, but then it wasn't until a little bit later when I worked with an automotive supplier. And that's where I was introduced to this idea of continuous improvement and lean methodology. And then I was really excited. Then I was like, there's no going back for me. So I dove right in and just started learning as much as I could, and I was fortunate enough to be part of a full site transformation and work alongside some really great lean coaches and learn some really, really powerful, being not just learning, but also applying it. Right. So I was part of that entire process. And then from there, ended up at Parker Hannifin, and Parker Hannifin has an amazing, this amazing culture of continuous improvement. So I hired in there as a plant lean manager, and basically they have 3 different levels of lean. They call it lean boot camp, and then different problem solving training and things like that. And I just soaked it all up and just kept learning and applying and learning and applying. And just grew into the point where I moved into different operations roles as a value stream manager, plant manager, and different companies. I moved out of Parker Hannifin to a few other companies, and just over the years, just continued to grow, my skill set, just keep adding different tools to my tool belt. And it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot over the years, and I got to a point after working in various lean roles. I got to a point where lean and operations roles got to a point where I felt like, I could do this on my own. And I stepped away from the corporate world, and I went out on my own as a lean consultant, and the rest is history. Been working with different operations leaders, and not just in manufacturing, but in lots of different companies, different size companies, different industries, and just applying continuous improvement methodology to really help transform leaders and organizations, and just love it.
Nice.
So,
well, congrats. I mean, you're out here, you're killing it. I
appreciate that. I think that for me, I'm a pretty simple guy, and lean is simple. And the unfortunate thing is, there's a lot of consultants, there's a lot of leaders out there that unfortunately have felt like they need to add all of this complexity to something that maybe doesn't need it, and I think that one of the things that I appreciate about what Toyota did is that it is a simple concept. And if you understand the concepts around continuous improvement and becoming a learning organization, then anyone can do it in any industry, at any level of an organization. And, that's really what I just love, when people get it and they understand that it's not about the tools. It's not about, this tool worked for this organization, so I need to apply it here. No. You need to learn what works for you. And I think that that's been the game changer, for a lot of organizations, is really truly understanding what it means to be a learning organization.
Now, so thank you, because that's one of the questions I was going to ask you a little bit later, but we're there. So would you say that that's your favorite part of lean, is when the light bulb goes off for folks?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's so many parts of it that I love, but definitely coaching is a big piece. I love to train. I love when people are able to take concepts and apply them, but being able to actually work alongside someone one-on-one, and again, watch them get it. When that, like you said, that light bulb goes off, it's just such a great time to watch them develop, and watch leaders that do really understand it, and then the tough side of it is, you're always going to deal with the struggles of, organizations with different leadership styles, and, people that are working underneath you as a leader, and how to manage 360 degrees and still, be a lean thinker. There's the challenges, and getting through that is another piece that I really enjoy as well.
Yeah.
There's so many challenges.
Well, and that's just it. So we had a listener email us last year, and they made a point, and I forget what episode they had referred, that I made a comment about, just that, a lot of this is I won't say it's easy, but it's simple. And
Mm-hmm.
and they said, it's just, you get on social media and you see pictures of, perfection, and it's intimidating.
Sure.
And I think that it does actually hurt sometimes, because people will see those things and they'll think, geez, I'll never get there. So I'm not even gonna start. I'm not even gonna try. And I think that's, why I'm drawn to the work that you do.
Mm.
And we chatted a little bit at UNH. It doesn't have to be that way. Just
That's right.
pick one thing that you can change that makes your life a little tiny bit easier,
Yeah.
and do it. And
that's right.
And right. Then tomorrow do it again. And then the next day do it. Right. And then pretty soon, 3, 6, 9 months down the road, you look back, you're like, geez, I don't even recognize where we were.
Right. That's exactly right. No, I agree with you 100%. And that's the reality of what we do, is that it is something that once people understand it, like you said, it's not that it's easy, because it takes a lot of hard work and a lot of, and a huge commitment from leadership. But it's the simple things that matter.
So do you have any, and I'm going to put you on the spot just a little teeny tiny bit, but is there
Sure.
a story or an instance that you can share? You don't have to name names or company names or anything, but
Yeah.
is there an instance, something like that you could share, that like the listeners could say, yeah, I have that, and that happens to me, and then kind of maybe what you did about it, how you led them through it, coached them through it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, one of the stories that I like to talk about, and it's actually in my book as well, but is the time when I was working with an individual, a person in a leadership position, and they were struggling with firefighting. And, for those that are listening that maybe don't know what that term means, it's really when, you've put a lot of temporary solutions in place, and maybe a lot of what we call band-aids, right? You're band-aiding things just to get by, and some of those band-aids are starting to pop off. And unfortunately, a lot of organizations find themselves in this place where their leaders, that's all they do all day long, is just trying to put out all of these fires. So they're always responding, and there's not a whole lot of proactive type of actions taking place, mostly just reactive. And that's a really tough place to be in. It's very stressful. It's very difficult for leaders. And this one leader was very much in this firefighter mode, and had, come into a firefighting culture, really. That's just the way that they worked there. And this individual, as we were walking, had this operator came running up to us, and the operator said, the line's down again, I don't know what to do. You got to help me out. And obviously, with permission from this leader, I felt like I needed to step in, and okay, let's do this. Let's do something a little bit different this time. And I asked the individual, what do you think that we should do? And I think this was the turning point for this leader, because normally what their normal reaction was to just go and fix it, go run and fix the fire, put the fire out. And for me to stop and say, what do you think we should do, was completely different than what, had ever been done here. And so the operator looked at me kind of funny, crazy like, and looked at the leader, and kind of almost like they needed permission to answer, and again, this was part of the culture. So he said to me, well, I guess that, the last time that this happened, and, the way that I think I would probably approach is I would probably try to clean off the rails and, see if that works. And I said, that sounds like a great idea. Why don't you go try that? and then, we'll stop by and check in on you and see how it goes. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, okay. So he took off, and this leader turned to me and he said, that's not going to work. And I was like, what do you mean? And he said, well, I'm pretty sure that one of the rails is actually bent, and that's going to be the problem. It's not that it needs to be cleaned. And I said, that's okay, because what's going to happen is this operator is going to try to clean the rails. It's not going to work. They're going to learn that it's not that the rails are dirty. They're going to experiment with something else. And eventually this operator will find out that the rails are bent, right? While it may take longer this time for that to happen, eventually over time, this operator is going to learn that they have the freedom to experiment. They're empowered to try some things. And what does that do for you as a leader? It allows you to spend your time working on other things, or maybe coaching that individual, by asking them questions and things versus giving them all the answers. When you give them all of the answers, you're really empowering them to bring more fires to you, right? Yep. If everyone knows that you're the person that can put the fires out, then everyone's going to come to you with their fires. But if you start pushing back on your team and, putting some of that responsibility into their hands, that's where things will start to change. And now you can start working on some of the bigger problems that need, maybe some more active and structured problem solving, versus some of the little fires that can be maybe taken care of by, the people that are closest to the work that probably know the answer. They just don't know. They just maybe don't feel like they're empowered to fix it.
Right. And so that was kind of one of the, thank you, because that was what, or I was hoping you were going to go. So how, in that scenario, if you hadn't have been there, would the culture have supported it? Would the culture have supported that employee trying their initial thought without going to the supervisor? And if it didn't work, AKA failed, which I hate the F word, but right. Would that person have gotten yelled at, written up? Like, what would have happened?
More than likely, I mean, the way that it was working at that time was that this particular leader and the other leaders were putting out all the fires. So, as soon as they would come into work, they'd have a list of, from second shift, third shift, of all the fires that had been put out and the ones that were still burning that they needed to go after right away. And they can't even make one walk around the plant without being approached with 2 or 3 more fires. And the way that culture worked was those leaders were the ones that would go put the fires out. So, the tough thing for a lot of organizations is, how do we transition, out of that? And it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's a long process, but it starts by shared accountability. You have an entire group of employees that are experts at what they do. They're working, in the business day in and day out. They're closest to the value add work. They know about all the problems, and they probably know solutions, and maybe solutions that are better than, any leader can provide. And it's not until you start empowering them that culture will start to change. And again, in the beginning, it'll take a lot longer because, people have to learn a lot of things, right? But then eventually you almost hit this tipping point, and the team's able to start solving problems much quicker. And again, without having to rely on the firefighters to get it done. And that's really what you want, because you want your leaders to be working on problem solving, maybe at a higher level or more project-based type of work. You want them to be coaching, right? There's certain things that they should be doing. And if they're tied up putting out fires all day long, then they're not doing what they should be doing as leaders.
Right. And then you get into the whole conversation of, what's next. And I've had those jobs where that was essentially right. I was a leader, but I was the fireman too. And yeah, as you describe it, I was having little mini flashbacks of, I would leave. And one of the stories I tell is, there were lots of times when I would leave at 5, 6 o'clock at night, feeling as if I was farther behind than I was at, 7 a.m. that morning, because for just that, it's like, I have 5 more things to do now than I did, 10 hours ago.
That's right.
So how does that work? So when you're working with, whether it's just you or clients or any, anything that you've been involved with or seen, how important is it? Because, you and I chatted it when we were at UNH about failure, right? And I pitched my idea, and I've gone on my own podcast and talked about, lean transformation failure rates and all that kind of stuff. And so you and I had a very in-depth discussion about that,
Mhm.
in the free 15 minutes that we each had. Um, but how important is it within an organization to be able to accept failure?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really, really great question, and it's it's very important, to say the least. And this is actually one of the questions that I lay out in my book, Avoiding the Continuous Appearance Trap. And the question is, how safe is it for your employees to fail? And it's such an important question because it really helps to, again, the result of allowing your team members the opportunity to fail is the type of culture that we want, a learning culture, right? And my leading quote for this particular chapter is from Katie Anderson, which both of us know, and she's the author of Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn. But she said in her book, leaders' words and actions set the culture for their organization. Seemingly small choices when it comes to language and behavior can have a big impact in shaping the people-centered culture that you want in your organization. And so I think this is pretty powerful because it ties right into what the question that you're asking me about, how important is it to allow your team to fail? And one of the other things that I lay out in this particular chat in the beginning of this chapter is I reference Captain Michael Abrashoff, which he's a former commander of, and he's the author of the book "It's Your Ship: Management Techniques from the Best Damn Ship in the Navy." Have you read that?
No, I haven't, but I know of
Oh,
it.
you got to get it. You got it. It's a good book. So he in the book he lays out this story of organizational transformation and innovative leadership, and where he took command of, at the time, the worst performing ship in the Navy, in the Pacific Fleet, not in the Navy, but in the Pacific Fleet, and he made it number one in 12 months with the same exact crew. Which is crazy, right? So if you think, how does that relate to me? I mean, if you think about, again, I don't know as a listener where all of your listeners are, what industry they're working in, but think about a company that is the worst performing team, within their industry or within their area, their company, and then being able within 12 months to turn that entire group around to number one with using the exact same employees, right? So that's important because that's key, right? The employees. But he attributes most of the turnaround to empowering and trusting his team members to make decisions. And part of that was allowing them to fail, which you think about, this guy's in the military. How can you allow, these sailors to fail at their job, right? But, one of these days I want to personally ask him how it felt to turn over that decision-making authority and really allow for that shared accountability, because of course he knew that they would fail. I mean, he had to know that they would fail. In fact, in the book, he says that even if the decisions were wrong, then he would stand by them and hopefully they would learn from their mistakes. And the more responsibility that they were given, the more that they learned. And that's such a powerful statement because it really lays out exactly how organizations should be acting when it comes to shared accountability and decision making and allowing their team members to learn from their mistakes. And that doesn't mean that as a leader we step away and we're not part of the process of them learning. That's really where a good coach steps in, is to help them navigate or help them work through that learning process. And that's exactly what he did on the ship. And it's not like he completely withdrew. I mean, he was, out there walking the ship with his I say employees, but with his sailors, and asking them questions and coaching them and helping them through the process. And how difficult must that have been for him, right? For them to make the wrong decision when him with 20 plus years experience, whatever it might be, he probably knew the answer a lot of times, but at the same time, he had to step back and just let them experience, maybe making the wrong decision, obviously keeping them safe and, not allowing anything unsafe to happen. But and there's another big piece of his book that talks about safety too and how important that was. But leaders today, they have to ask themselves, how safe is it for your employees to fail at your organization, right? Companies can't develop breakthrough processes if they're not willing to encourage risk taking and learn from those subsequent mistakes. In traditional work environments, managers are expected to make most of the decisions themselves and take on all responsibility. And for me, working in various operations roles, that's exactly what was expected of me at Company Continuous Appearance, which again I talk about in the book, but was for me to assume all responsibility versus share that among the rest of the team. But how many problems can one manager attend to by themselves, right?
Yeah, not enough.
No, exactly. But again, if for me, I watched as many managers would try to take on that decision themselves or all the decisions themselves, and then you have a super slow decision-making process where everybody's waiting for these decisions to happen, and then eventually it's like we got all these team members are waiting, and here comes an answer. Well, it's like that's not even relevant anymore. That was relevant 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And so again, it's important that we create that environment where employees are part of the decision-making process, where we share accountability, and where they feel safe to experiment and try new things and get better. And even if they don't succeed, rather than yelling at them or telling them that they did the wrong thing, celebrating the fact that they learned something, and allowing them to continue experimenting in other ways. That's the key.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the correlations I use a lot in our training is a quote from Henry Ford and a quote from Taiichi Ono. Right. So you figure Ford and Toyota, they do the same thing. Right. So let's say, you and I have the same job and we put door panels in or something. Right. So the quote from Henry Ford is, how come every time I hire a pair of hands, it comes with a brain attached or something like that?
Yeah.
And then the one from Taiichi Ono, and I'll paraphrase, it was, people don't come to Toyota just to work. They come here to think. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you think about even walking into the plant, you and I, we have the same exact job, but how are we going to feel about that? Right. It's like, okay, Patrick, you're hanging door panels, but if you have an idea, we really want to hear about, does it make it easier or whatever? And with me, it's like, Critchley, if you don't hit, 1,000 door panels hung this hour, it's your butt, so right. It's like, wait a sec, like we do the same exact thing. And to your point of, being the freedom that comes along with experimenting on top of, I'm a firm believer, and my history is, automotive. That's where I get my start with lean. Sure. I worked in aerospace. I made military jet engines. So I've worked on some pretty cool stuff. And I've been involved in cultures on both ends of the spectrum. Sure. And I remember just how much what the difference felt like, because I knew, and it was interesting because, now being on this side, like, cause we're both lean consultants. So we're, the shiny eyes, third parties, we walk in and we can see things that other people will miss because it's just like that all the time.
Sure.
It's so interesting to me to watch how these cultures evolve, because to your point, obviously it's a risk-based thing. We have clients that work on nuclear stuff. So it's like, you might not want to experiment too much, but at least have a culture that allows people to ask those questions, pull the andon cord when something doesn't seem right, and it can't just be, metrics all the time, metrics, right? I mean, everybody wants cost, quality, on-time delivery, safe, right? It's always in manufacturing, we do some hospital stuff, right? So it's throughput and, but I get that part. And yeah, but if you handle this stuff first, if you engage and encourage your people, so they don't feel like a pair of hands when they walk in, right? They actually like, oh, you value my opinion? What a concept,
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and it's always a surprise to me when, as a consultant, when I come into an organization and, they ask me to maybe facilitate an improvement event or work with a team. And the first thing that I usually tell the team and even leadership, which is sometimes surprising when I ask, okay, let's make sure that we have good representation of all of the experts in the room. And they're like, what do you mean? Like, they're the experts. And again, if I say that to the group, sometimes I'm met with like, what do you mean we're the experts? Like, you're the leader here, you're the consultant.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my job to tell you how to do your job better. You guys already know that. You know the things that add value to your end customer, to the product or the service that you're providing. You guys know it already. I don't know it like you know it. I don't know how to run this machine. I don't know how the flow works through this particular process. You know it. You're the experts, right? I'm going to facilitate the process of improvement, using some different tools and techniques and some different facilitation techniques and things, but that's it, right? You guys are the experts, and really, they're the ones that are going to be providing the value, so that's always fun for me, to work with a team and really draw out a lot of that value that they're there to provide. And the unfortunate thing is many times it's with teams that have never felt that before. They've never been asked. They've never, anytime they've tried to speak up, they get met with leadership that says, we have people that fix those problems. Go do your job,
Mm-hmm.
stop complaining. Well, it's not a complaint, right? Start listening. And I think things will change for you. And again,
Right.
sometimes that's hard for organizations to hear, but that's what I love. That's what I love about what I do.
And I'm right there with you, because it's, to your point, I always say the same thing. The people that do the work know best. Now
That's
it's up
right.
to us, like you, me, the leadership of these companies. Just, we have to ask the right questions
That's
to
right.
pull, because like you said, a lot of times they've never been asked before. And it's like, whoa, 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 and I get pushback sometimes. Even people are like, well, that's above my pay grade. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, it, no, let's talk. Like, and, and those are the ones I enjoy the most, because it's always sometimes the dissenters, but you can, I don't know, as I do this more and more, you can almost kind of tell the people that, are flat out, I hate this, it's never going to work, don't talk to me. And, that's the end of it, versus
Sure.
the people are like, I'm pretty sure this isn't going to work. But then you can always I'm thinking of this one guy, you know, he was one of those folks. But I always notice, like, I'm over here doing something and I kind of look and he's watching. And I'm like,
Sure.
and like the days go by, weeks, and this is a long-term client. So, weeks go by until and I chat with him a little bit. And then finally the day came, Patrick, where he's like, hey, I want to show you something. So I come over and he shows me, he's like, I was thinking, if I did this and I did that, you think that would be okay? I'm like, yeah, I think that's actually a really great idea. Next day I came in, it was done. And it was like, from then on, he was
Mm,
like my best friend, and he
powerful.
was like, he was one of our biggest, cheerleaders
Oh
there,
yeah.
and he was
That's right.
like, he's like, and he would be the guy to say, when anybody else started to complain a little, and they're like, he'd like, no, 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 guys, I hated this too. And I'm telling you, it
Mm,
works. Just give it a chance. You got to try it,
yeah.
and that's, to me, it's like, all right, it's like, yeah, here we go. And I'll tell
That's
you,
right.
a lot of the stuff that he came up with, or even, not just him, but it was small, but in comparison. And I always say that lean small ball, it's singles and doubles. And I say every once
Sure.
in a while you hit a home run, which is great, but you
That's
can't,
right.
right? You can't count on that. So when you talk about, continuous improvement, you're dealing with clients, do you kind of feel that same way? Do you disagree, or how, what's your take?
No, absolutely, I do. Small, simple improvements are key, and that is definitely where you're, like you said, that the singles and the doubles. I mean, that's really uh, where you need to be focused as a lean leader in an organization. So many consultants and leaders, Six Sigma belts, they make it seem like lean is, needs to have this deep level of complexity that no one can understand. And as we discussed earlier, it's just not true. You have to think about it like a river that runs through rock. And I've talked about this before, but I visited the Grand Canyon this last year with my family for the first time. I had never been out there before. And, just if you know, the Grand Canyon has the Colorado River running through it. And, obviously there's a ton of different theories and ideas about how the Grand Canyon was created or, became where it is. But you can't deny the fact that over time, the Colorado River has, very slowly, as water runs through rock, created what is now the Grand Canyon. And the key word that comes to mind when you think about that is its persistence, right? It's just little things time and time again that makes it happen. And it's not the big massive projects, right? Which those are important, but that's not where the massive change comes from. It really comes from the persistence of small, simple improvements over time, and developing your learning organization with these small improvements by engaging the minds of your teams, like we talked about. That's what's going to get you that huge improvement that you're looking for, over time. There's a recipe that I lay out in the book, 3 steps, very simple, but they go something like this. Ask for simple ideas daily. Number 2, implement those ideas with help from your team daily, and then celebrate success daily. Very simple, right? 3 very simple steps. And, again, like we talked about earlier, small and simple doesn't necessarily mean easy, right? I mean, Paul Akers from FastCap is a great example of this. He's done a great job at helping to communicate what true lean is, right? It's the small, simple improvements that add up over time to create these huge impacts. But this isn't a simple thing. I mean, Paul, if you know anything about Paul, Paul comes in every day to FastCap, and he's out on the production floor first thing in the morning. He's walking the floor. He's talking to his team. He's asking them, how did their experiments go? And what's their one improvement that they made today? And, what's their 2-second lean? And he's taking videos, and he's doing pictures, and he's supporting them, whether they are able to succeed at their experiments or, in quotation marks, fail, right? What did they learn? And this is something that he's doing every single day, consistently, and, celebrating and coaching. And to create that level of consistency and excitement takes a lot of hard work, but it pays off with the little things, the 2-second improvements. Mm-hmm. And that's really the key.
Right. Yeah. Because, I mean, it's always great to swing for the fences, but mm-hmm. You strike out a lot doing that too. And then I think we probably both seen instances where, people will do that and then it doesn't work. And they're like, lean doesn't work. It's, blah, blah, right. And then it's twice as hard to get started again, and that's you kind of lose some momentum or whatever. But
yeah, there was an organization that I worked with, where we set a goal for, I think it was 20 implemented improvement ideas a day, I think it was, or no, a month. I'm sorry, a month for this organization. It was a smaller organization, a lot of complexity. So just 20 a month, can we come up with 20 a month? And we actually made it visual. We had just Post-it notes on the wall, the big white Post-its on the walls, one representing every month. And then every month they take their ideas that were implemented and they would put them up on this board. And these were just small little things. And over time, those ideas just started to really transform the way that they were thinking about their business. And, one of the key things is that you do have to make sure that you're not just spending a ton of time, working on things that maybe aren't moving you closer to what, we would call like your true north, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you definitely don't want to just spitball and hope that you're working on the right stuff. You need to definitely have direction and make sure that your team knows the direction, that it's communicated, and, your long-term vision is very clear. And then, those small fixes, those small improvements, every problem and challenge that you're working on should be moving you closer, right? And for that particular team that I was working with, we were making sure that every one of those improvements was helping them to move one step closer, little by little, right? With persistence over time towards, what they had established as their long-term vision. And, the results of that are just extraordinary.
Yeah. And it's, it's like anything else. Like, just at the end of last season, our last podcast was just me talking about reflection on your previous year and setting goals. And I talk a little bit about New Year's resolutions, and my, the short version is I'm like, don't do them, because I read a study. It was like 80% are toast by about Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
And I think the reason is because people they go too big. They're like, I'm going to lose 15, 20 pounds. I'm going to quit smoking. And it's like, hey, well, okay. But pick a date in the future. Maybe that's your 1 year plan. You say, all right, maybe instead, I'm not a smoker, but hey, instead of 6 cigarettes, by the end of January, I'll be down to 5 a day. And then
Yeah,
maybe, and like, or whatever. I mean, I've never had to quit smoking. I don't know how difficult it is. I hear it's hard, but as an example, I feel like, like you mentioned, with this, make small improvements and they add up over time. That's
right.
really the key. It's just like working out at the gym. It's like, or I can't, I talked before, I want to run the Boston Marathon at some point in my life. I can't do that right now. I would make it 5 miles probably, and I'd be tapped out. But if I start to train and you get ready and over time,
little by little, you start out with a mile, walk a mile, then maybe, work your way up to jogging a mile, and, it's little things that add up to huge benefits.
Right. So Patrick, I do like to take a little bit of a break of the air quotes formal, because this is a very formal podcast, but, and I like to do a little thing I like to call the wicked fun part.
All right.
If you're up for it, I have just a handful of kind of rapid fire questions for you. Is that cool?
Throw them at me.
All right. Tell me something about your last job other than money that would have inspired you to keep working there.
Okay. That's a good question. So I would say flexibility. At the time, the majority, and this probably resonates well with a lot of people right now. At the time, working from home was not really an accepted way of doing things. And I actually was working with someone outside of the country regularly. And so I would drive 40 minutes into work to sit in an office chair, jump on a Skype or a Zoom with this person outside of country, and then work with them throughout the day. And then at the end of the day, I drive 40 minutes home. And so I'm like, hey, can I just take these at home? And, and the answer was no, I need to have a certain amount of time in my chair. And it's like, so
do I really?
I don't think that would have changed the outcome of the work that we were doing together. But so I think that would probably, if I had to say other than money, that would have kept me inspired. A little bit more flexibility in how we do our job. Really, if your employees well enough, and this doesn't work for everybody, and I understand that. But if I'm completing what you're asking me to do, why does it matter where I'm completing it from, or how long it takes me, or, if I got it done, then I got it done. So,
right. What difference does it make? Why do I? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Ooh, the best advice. The best advice is go and see. I think that's always the best advice for anyone. Don't try to answer a question or think you know the answer or make an assumption. Go and see, know the facts, know what's really happening. So that would be the best advice.
Nice. I like it. I always encourage everybody to do the same thing, whether they're a client or not. Even our kids, it's like, are you sure that's how it is? Maybe you should ask, or same thing. Go and see and investigate, because I've made the mistake where I think I'm convinced I am right. And you go out and you look, you're like, oh man.
Oh yeah.
Off.
Yeah. So I just had that actually not that long ago where there was a team that swore up and down that something was happening a certain way. And when we went out and watched it, they were like, I would have never thought that. Never would have thought it based on what we knew from the data. And it's like, you have to spend the time. You have to go out and validate. Things change. People change.
I'll share a quick story. When I was in the automotive industry, I was at a tier one, and we made bearings for automatic transmissions mostly. And we had one that we had a hair. So we had what we call unitized assemblies. So it was a bearing with races that would snap on, right? So it was all
Okay.
units. You could drop it in the transmission. It was fine. And we had one that had a hairline crack. And for the life of us, we could not figure this thing out until finally, somebody's like, and I forget who it was. They're like, why don't we just go out and look? And, for like, this is 25 years ago. So it's a little fuzzy. So I'll say it was for weeks. We were trying to solve this problem. And I happened to be in the plant at the time. So me and another manufacturing engineer go out, and it's Patrick, it's this, like, it's right here. All you had to do was look and you could see it.
Yeah.
And it's like, that was the issue the whole time. And I'll tell you so basically what it was a pick and place with little fingers. Well, some manufacturing engineer at some point, there was a giant turntable with tooling that, went inside these little counter bores, because we would change that machine over to do a bunch of different part numbers. Well, they said, I have a great idea. I'm going to make this so you don't have to put it in just one way. It can go in this way, or it can go in this way. And for those listening, it's 12 and 6 or 3 and 9. But I'm going to make basically a 4-leaf clover, so these two fingers can go in either way and everything will be fine. So it'll save us on setup time. Aha, that's a great lean idea. The problem was, though, in the next station, when this thing got snapped together, it was done with these pneumatic pistons. And it just so happened to line up with one of the voids on the bottom. Okay. So it would flex the race just enough to crack it. And it was a hairline you would never, unless you knew it was there, you would never see it. And it was just like, and within, no kidding, 2 minutes of us watching this machine, we figured it out. And I'm like, I just remember looking at the other guy, Tim, and I'm like, if we'd done this a few weeks ago, we'd be done by now.
That's right.
He's like, yeah. That's right. But shut up, because we're not going to tell anybody that.
Yeah, exactly.
How do you find or stay motivated?
Yeah, that's another good question. I would say, there's different people, different companies that I benchmark. I do some vision thinking in the mornings. I also would say that, my family, my team, making sure that, everybody's taken care of and that things are going well. I mean, those are all things that I think kind of motivate me and keep me going, for sure.
Yeah. It's important to have purpose, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly. We have a purpose, at our company to empower and equip people for positive change. And, that's not just the clients that we work with, but it's ourselves too, and continuing to improve and develop ourselves as leaders, as, good contributors to society. And, and I think that those are all the things that kind of just keep pushing me along.
That's what we're here for, I think.
That's right.
Right. I say the same thing, let's try to leave it better than when we found it.
Yep.
Each and every day.
That's right.
Last question. Is there anything you would change about the journey that is taking you to where you are sitting here talking to me right now?
I would say that the answer to that question is probably no. I mentioned this earlier, but I grew up with a bit of a tough life growing up. And I've had people ask me that about my childhood too. Would you change anything all the way back there? And it's like, if I changed anything, I wouldn't have what I have today. I wouldn't have learned the things that I've learned today. I think that a lot of the challenges, the roadblocks, the struggles that we go through in life, help form us into who we are and what we do and what we've been called to do. And I think that's who I'm becoming. That's who I am. And I wouldn't change that,
Yeah.
So
100%. I'm right there with you. I mean, I didn't grow up great either. I talked a little bit on our episode in season 1 with Mark C. Crowley, because he had a kind of a rough go of it for a little while. And I think it comes down to, at least for me, it comes down to what are we going to do about it? I come from a place in rural Maine that, you know, eh, my experience was not unique. And kids I've grown up with, have, they've struggled, and it's taken them in different paths, different ways. So I think if I asked them that question, maybe they would say, yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know where it comes from. And it's not to say that, you and I or me, like we did it right and they did it wrong.
Right.
It's just, to your point too, I look back and I'm like, sometimes I'm jealous, I'm like, man, if only this had happened or this didn't happen, how would I be different? But I think
Sure.
that does push me too, I have that
Absolutely.
constant, I'm not good enough kind of a thing. And it's been a detriment. My wife will tell you at some times, but at the same time, it's like, maybe I wouldn't have had the guts to go out on my own. Right. And try this. And maybe, I don't know, who knows? So,
Yeah.
and plus I think it's fruitless anyway, because you can't go
Yeah.
back and change it. That's been another thing I've been working on. Right. Which is
That's right.
let it go. It's like, it's
Yeah.
over, it's done with. And yeah, it sucks. And I wouldn't have, you know,
Yeah.
picked it out that way if I went to the store and said, I'll take this childhood. And right. But
Yeah.
it is what it
Well,
is.
it's the same thing, even I think about like Marine Corps boot camp, it's not something I'd want to do again, but I'm definitely glad I did it. I learned a lot there. I think about, I went through actually the last time that I was in Maine, I went through SEER school in the military, which is survival, evasion, resistance, and escape. And you actually get put into a literal POW camp. And again, not something that I would ever want to do again. But you know what? There were a lot of things that I learned that I apply every day in life. And I just think about just here's a quick story from SEER school. There was a young captain that was put in charge of our group in the POW camp, and there was a time where we were standing in line and we were all very hungry because we hadn't eaten much, if not anything, in a couple of days. And we were in line because they had this soup that they were giving to us. And one of the guards actually, well, a couple of they made the officers go in line first before the enlisted. And at this time I was enlisted. And so I was towards the back of the line, and the highest ranking officer was the captain, and he got his soup first, and then a couple other lieutenants after him. And then one of the guards actually intentionally knocked over the soup, and it spilled all over the ground. And there were probably, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 officers that had received their soup. And this captain had to make a decision, about what they would do in this situation. And he was the first one to start divvying up his soup to a few of the enlisted members to make sure that they got some soup that day. And I just remember like just that servant leadership that he showed that day was something that stuck with me. And, as a lean leader, as an operations leader, you have to be a servant. You have to be willing to put others ahead of yourself if you want, if you want to continue to grow and improve and become better. You have to be willing to do that. And that was one thing that stuck with me from that point forward. So so again, just things like that. I think I'd never want to do that again, but there's a lot of really good little tidbits that come out of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So Patrick, I don't want to take up your whole, I mean, I could do this all day with you, honestly. I love listening
Some
to these
good
stories.
conversation.
So we're going to wrap up, but I know, so you had mentioned it a little bit already, and I know I did in the intro, but your book is coming out like ever so soon, right?
Yes. Very, very quickly here. January 13th, the book is published. It's been available for pre-sale only in the US for the introductory pre-sale price, and which is about 20% lower than what it will be. And the great thing is that when it publishes on January 13th, and again, this was not something that I chose. This is something within Amazon or whatever. I don't know. But so we're going to keep the pre-sale introductory price open for a week after the book published, January 13th till January 20th, I believe. And so that price will still be available to anyone, within the US or outside of the US. And then the ebook is also going to be available on February 10th.
Okay.
But the title of the book is Avoiding the Continuous Appearance Trap. And it's really the throughout the book, I give 12 questions for leaders to really uncover what's truly underneath their culture. And throughout the book, I walk the readers through a case study of two companies that I worked for, which I did change the names and some of the details and things to protect the innocent.
Yeah, and the guilty.
And the guilty. But these two companies, if you walked into either of these companies, you would see they would look very similar at the surface. Very similar org structures. Both had similar KPIs of safety, quality, cost, delivery. You would see lots of really great visual management on the walls. So at the surface, you would see two very similar companies. However, underneath, one of these companies had an amazing culture of continuous improvement, and the other one had what I like to call a culture of continuous appearance, where they appeared to have everything in order and they appeared to have all of the same things that a true company, a culture of continuous improvement would have. But underneath, it was a very toxic culture and a place where people didn't enjoy to work. The turnover was really high. A lot of problems, no sustainability of actions, lots of those fires, that we talked about earlier, fires all over the place, and just a really tough environment. And the 12 questions that I lay out in the book, which we talked quite extensively about two of those questions, but those really are meant to become a guide. As you answer these questions, they should help to create some priority and for leaders so that they can start experimenting and trying some different things within their organization to really start either moving from having a culture of continuous appearance to having a culture of continuous improvement, or, maybe you're hearing about all of this for the first time. This will help you establish that roadmap that you need as an organization to start, moving toward developing a culture of continuous improvement.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You can order the book. You can go to our website at avoidcontinuousappearance.com.
Okay.
Or it's available on Amazon too. Either the ebook or the paperback will be available, and you can purchase it right now for pre-sale. Otherwise, it's available, after January 13th and then February 10th for the ebook.
Nice. Well, congrats again. And I'll link out for anybody listening. I'll link out in the show notes to your website, the book website, Amazon. So it'll be easy for people to click and be able to get it. And I got to hand it to you. Like, I mentioned before we hopped on, I only wrote a chapter of the book a couple, 3 years ago. And it was like, that was daunting. So writing a whole book, I get it. My hat's off to you. I
appreciate that, Paul. It's been a lot of work, but again, this is where my passion is. This is what I love to do, and my real hope is that this book will end up in the hands of the people that need it most, and that it could be transformative for them and for their organization, and that's really what I hope will happen.
I'm sure it will, and I'll do my best. Like I said, I'm going to grab mine, and I can't wait to read it, and I wish you all the best of luck with it.
All right. Thank you so much, Paul.
All right, Patrick, take it easy.
All right. Take care.
Talk to you later. Hey, everybody, it's Paul. Before I let you go, I just wanted to say thanks again for listening. You've really made doing this podcast a very rewarding experience for me. I get a lot of messages from listeners, and everyone has something nice to say, which I very much appreciate. Of course, I'm always open to feedback on ways we can make it better. I mean, that's Kaizen after all. And by no stretch do I claim to have got this all figured out. So if there's things that I could do better, please, by all means, feel free to reach out and let me know. And likewise, if there's somebody that you think would be a great guest, also let me know. There's a chance I don't know who those folks are. So somebody that you can help put us in touch with, somebody you want to learn more about, certainly let me know and I'll reach out to those folks. But I hope you find the podcast fun and entertaining, educational, and maybe even a little inspirational, I hope. That's really what I'm going after with this whole thing. So thanks again. And one small ask, if you don't mind, if you listen, whatever your preferred platform is, if you could just, subscribe, give us 5 stars on Apple or whatever, again, whatever platform you listen to, it helps. The algorithms like it. So if you could do that for me, I would greatly appreciate it. And we'll talk to you real soon. Thanks, everybody.